welcome back to the channel. Tiffany here with our second video out of 3 for making a Teoritta costume from the anime Sentenced to be a Hero. And if you missed that first video on making the fabric robe part, make sure to check that one out. And this video is going to be all about making the EVA foam armor. Yee! And I'll be going over cutting out all the pieces, assembling, priming all of the pieces, painting, and how to do all of the attachments to get in and out of it to wear at your convention. But before we begin, remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with all of my tutorials to help you with your next cosplay build. So, let's go! And here is everything that you're gonna need for making the foam part of the armor, as well as you can find my pattern on tiffanyGordonCosplay.com, and I'll have links to all of this in the description. Starting off with the shoulder pads. And I start off by cutting all of the detailed part of the shoulder pads using my laser cutter in 4mm foam, but you do not need a laser cutter for any part of this project. You can simply cut it all out by hand by using an X-Acto knife as well as a cutting mat. And for the trim, I'm gonna be using 10mm half-round foam dowels. And for making those sharp corners, I would get dowels, I would lay them on the foam, and then I would cut them in the angle that they would meet up with their corresponding foam piece. And I would do this for all of the edges. Then with some contact cement glue, I applied it to the edge pieces, waited for the glue to dry, and then attached them into the outer trim. And for attaching the trim to the actual detail part, again, we're gonna be using contact cement glue, and I highly recommend tracing where that trim lays on top of our 4mm foam sheet part, and then applying the glue there, as well as to the back side of our dowels. Wait for the glue to dry, and again, attach them together. Then grab your 2mm foam sheet. You can either trace the actual size that I have in the pattern, or you can just kind of trace a little bit larger than your detailed piece. And then we're going to apply more contact cement glue to both the back side of our detailed pieces and the top side of our 2mm foam. Wait for it to dry, and once again, attach them together. Then you'll just cut out along the edges, and you should have 4 pieces for the shoulder pads. And always when attaching 2 pieces of foam together, your edges don't quite align. So I like to grab my Dremel and a sanding drum and sand them all flush, as well as towards the back side, I do round it ever so slightly. Then one more coat of contact cement glue, this time to our center. After it is dry, we can start to attach the halves of the shoulder pads together. And a helpful tip is starting from one side, using the table, and slowly pushing the pieces together as you make your way to the other side. And this will make it so they align both flush. Then just smooth out that seam with a sanding drum and put those shoulder pieces to the side as they are now complete. And onto the chest plate. And again, we're going to be tracing this onto 4mm foam. And as always, before cutting out any foam pieces, I highly recommend using a heat tool to heat up the foam so that way it reduces the pores, and then cut it out using an X-Acto knife. And just like the shoulder pads, the chest plate also has a trim, and I did the same process, cutting the 2 pieces so they would come at a point in the center, applying our glue and attaching the 10mm half foam dowel to the chest plate. And one quick pass with the sanding drum onto the edges to round it out slightly, and the chest plate is now done. So put that to the side. Next was for making the collar. And just like the shoulder pads, I cut out the detail pieces using my laser cutter out of 4mm foam, and repeated the same process for doing the trim with the 10mm half round foam dowels. Also for this piece, I added a 2mm foam backing to the piece, applying our contact cement glue to the top part of the 2mm foam and the back half of our detailed 4mm foam, waited for the 2 halves to dry, and attached them together. And the final step was cutting it out with an X-Acto knife. And now that we have all 3 of the main components done, we can start to attach them. Starting with attaching the collar to the chest plate. And for this, I applied my contact cement glue to the bottom portion of the collar, as well as to the top center part of the chest plate. And after they were dry, attach them together, starting with the very center and then working around trying to align the pieces as close as possible. And because this is going to be sitting around your neck, I didn't want it to be too sharp. So I did go back onto the underside where those pieces aligned, and with a sanding drum kind of rounded it just ever so slightly. I then traced where the shoulder pads would lay onto the sides, as well as one part we haven't talked about. There's actually 2 gemstones that sit on the front chest plate, and these I actually ended up 3D modeling and printing in PLA filament, and that file is available on my website, link in the description. And after printing it and sanding, I then applied glue to both the back sides of the gems and the shoulder pads, and also onto the chest plate. And once all the glue was dry, I could then attach them together. Side note, you should attach the shoulder pads while the chest plate is bent around the body, so that way your shoulder pads will help hold the chest plate in the correct shape that it should end up in. And that should complete all the base foam fabrication for this piece. And now for my favorite part, which is painting. And here's all the tools and materials that I did for painting this piece. And as always, I like to prime my pieces with Plasti Dip. And this is a rubber spray paint. You will want to apply it in 3 heavy coats, waiting between each coat at least 45 minutes to an hour so you get the proper bondage. And this is going to make your foam surface so much smoother, and this is just going to hold all of your pieces together better. And after waiting 24 hours, once your last coat of Plasti Dip is applied, we can move on to painting. And I'm going to be using airbrush paint provided by Teoritta Colors, as well as all of my airbrush equipment provided by Iwata Airbrush. And airbrush painting is always about painting in layers. So I'm going to start off with a base coat of Teoritta Colors Wicked Cream, applying just an even coat onto the entire front half as well as the underside of our armor. And once that coat of paint was dry, it was on to our next color, which is going to be a mixture of cream and burnt umber. And this one I applied into all of those tiny little detailed cutouts onto the collar and the shoulder pads. And when that's dry, you will want to mask all of those parts off. And I highly recommend cutting strips of masking tape with an X-Acto knife, so that way you can have them all fit in here. And my little trick is using needle nose tweezers to help get into those tricky corners. And moving on to our next coat, which is again going to be a mixture of cream and burnt umber, but this time I'm going to be applying a lot more of the burnt umber to the mixture so it's slightly browner. And I focused mainly on the chest plate for this area. And I forgot to film it, but once this coat of paint was dry, I did end up masking it off with masking tape and some computer paper, and then went on to the next color, which is also going to be a mixture of cream and burnt umber, as well as a tiny bit of gold chrome, as I wanted to have a little bit more of a metallic kind of bronze-like look for this. And I applied it to the collar and to the shoulder pads for this coat. And the final main color that we're going to be doing is a mixture of pearl plum and pearl blue, just onto the 2 gems. And this is really going to make it pop, as well as it has a kind of more metallic pearlescent look. Then to reveal all of our colors underneath. And I'll note that I had a little bit of paint come under, as I did slightly heavier coats of paint than I normally do. So I did have to go back and do a tiny bit of touch-ups in places. And because this is a anime cosplay build, I always like to do the more styled, darker lines on pieces. And for doing this, I actually will use airbrush paint and a paintbrush and apply it by hand to get those to do all of my outlines. And for this part, I end up using the Teoritta Colors Candy 2O paint line in color Dirt Track Brown. And the Candy 2O paint line, you can manipulate very easily. And so I like to do as a fun little trick to kind of make it more of a wash is I'll get a Q-tip and with some airbrush cleaner, I'll actually kind of slightly remove all of that paint, and it'll make it where it stays more in the crevice and kind of does a slight wash in the middle center area. And the final step for all airbrush painting is to seal it. And I always like to use Createx Colors UVLS. And for this one, I'm going to be using their matte shine. And you're going to be applying it to the entire surface, both the front and the back of your armor. And this is going to ensure that all of your paint has the same shine throughout, even if you're using different types of airbrush paint, as well as it's going to protect it from the UV lights. Now for the fun part of attachments. Specifically with this armor, if you were just to have it sit on top, the robe is going to move back and forth, and it's not going to have that kind of poof outness to match the armor shape. So what I ended up doing was adding 4 pieces of Velcro to help it. There are 2, one directly under each of these parts to help attach to the front panel. And then on each of these shoulder pads, there is a piece of Velcro right here at the edge, and that's gonna help the fabric lay. And if your arms are down next to your side, the fabric should still stay slightly out, giving it a little bit more lift and flow to your character. As well as getting in and out of this armor, I decided to go with a separating zipper method right here to be able to get in and out really easily. Normally, I would not do this attachment as the zipper tends to be a lot more noticeable, but Teoritta has a lot of hair that covers all of this section, so you won't actually see it at all. And when attaching any Velcro or zippers, I don't like to just attach it straight to the foam. I actually will end up sewing the Velcro to another piece of 2mm foam, and then that foam will be glued directly to your normal foam. This makes it so your foam is gluing to foam, which gives you the best contact and strength for attaching any attachment. I did the same method for attaching the zipper. So I sewed the zipper to the 2mm foam, and then I sandwiched it in between the 2 pieces of foam with contact cement glue. This will also give it the strongest attachment to your piece, and it won't come apart. And that, guys, is how I made all the armor for my Teoritta costume. I hope this video was helpful for you bringing to life this character, or maybe just learning some new techniques for another build. And if you found it helpful, let me know in the comments, as well as what other character should I bring to life next. Reminder, there will be a 3rd video for Teoritta coming out soon, which will be over how I made her wig. Make sure to check that one out. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. A big thank you to all of my company sponsors, as well as all of my members here on YouTube, specifically those legendary members who help to support me so I can continue doing this as my full-time job, bringing you more cosplays and tutorials. So yeah, and I'll see you for our last video on Teoritta. So see you soon.